You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
America's point of no return. Is Trump's irreversible damage. And what comes next, based on an article by John Stoher. Trans rights are the test case, the real story. The source material is not really about sports. It is about power using a tiny, vulnerable population as a rehearsal space for broader authoritarian politics. The immediate trigger is the Supreme Court blessing state bans on transgender athletes. But the larger story is the right's successful effort to turn trans existence into a public obedience test, then to dress that cruelty up as ordinary governance. Who holds power? The people with actual institutional power here are clear. Donald Trump and the Republican movement he normalized, the state legislatures pushing these bans, and the judges who convert prejudice into doctrine. Trans people do not hold comparable power. They are being managed, sorted, and excluded by institutions that can rewrite daily life from above. That is the basic asymmetry the article gets right, even if its framing still treats the issue too much like a debate over sports. It is not a debate. It is state power deciding whose body counts as legitimate. The wedge is the point. Trans women in sports were never the real prize. They were the perfect wedge. Few people affected, low immediate stakes for outsiders, and just enough confusion to let conservatives rehearse a larger claim that trans people should be forced back into birth-assigned categories. That is why this attack started in athletics and then moved outward toward identity documents, restrooms, and prison protections. The target keeps expanding because the purpose was never sports policy. The purpose was to make exclusion feel normal, then portable. Centrist accommodation. The article is strongest when it names the rot inside the respectable center. A lot of Democrats, allies, and self-styled moderates have treated trans rights as a manageable loss, something to concede in the hope of keeping the rest of the board intact. That is how you help the right. You do not need to cheer the attack to make it easier. You only need to call it politically inconvenient and retreat. The pose of neutrality is doing real work here. It tells the public that right-wing demonization is a reaction to something else, not a deliberate choice to punch down. That is the lie. The demonization is the strategy. The precedent is bigger than trans life. The article correctly points to the dangerous logic beneath the ruling. If a state can ban a safe and effective treatment or bar a tiny class of people from equal participation because they are easy to isolate, then the legal architecture for broader exclusions is already being rehearsed. This is how rights collapse in practice, not in one theatrical leap, but through selective exceptions that train courts, legislatures, and the public to accept unequal protection as common sense. Once that habit is installed, the target can change. Today it is trans athletes. Tomorrow it is whatever other right-wingers decide is too politically weak to defend. The pattern, the system is not failing trans people by accident. It is using them to teach everyone else what diminished citizenship looks like. First, a minority is recast as a problem. Then that problem is made respectable by the center. Then the courts bless the result. Then the same machinery looks for the next right it can hollow out. That is the political meaning of this story. Trans rights are not an isolated culture skirmish. They are a stress test for democratic equality, and the institutions running the test are revealing exactly how much exclusion they think the public will tolerate. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to AlterNet for today's article. With the automated voice of LJ, thanks for listening.